Hello and welcome to the Feeling Good podcast. I am your host, Fabrice Nye, and joining me here in the Murrieta studios is Dr. David Burns. Hi, David.
Hi, Fabrice.
Dr. David Burns has been a pioneer in the development of cognitive therapy, and he is the creator of the new team therapy. He is the author of Feeling Good, which has sold over 5 million copies in the United States and has been translated into over 20 languages. He is an emeritus adjunct clinical professor of psychiatry at the Stanford University School of Medicine. Welcome to episode 42 of the Feeling Good podcast. And today I'm going to be a little bit selfish, and I wanted to ask David for some ideas on a technique that's called shame attacking exercises, which is a form of exposure. And I figured since I'm asking him for some ideas on how to do this, we might as well publish it for all to hear. So David, I have some patients who have some, social anxiety. They can be big or small, but I want to expose them to some social interactions that may be a little bit difficult for them, or maybe very difficult for them. And one thing that has been my concern is I don't want to do anything that will actually hurt people or harm people or disturb even people who are doing their day job. So I'd love to hear what kind of fancy ideas you have about shame attacking exercises.
Sure, this is one of my favorite topics in the whole world, and the shame attacking exercises. That's just one technique out of many that I use to treat social anxiety, which is more commonly known as shyness. And so we'll just cover shame attacking exercises in this broadcast today, but in future podcasts we'll go over other powerful techniques for overcoming social anxiety as well. The DSM describes multiple kinds of social anxiety, for example, public speaking anxiety and shyness. There's shy bladder syndrome, where you're afraid to pee in public. There's performance anxiety and test anxiety, and I've had so many types of social anxiety myself. I just love it because, when patients come with shyness or public speaking anxiety, I can say, wow, boy, I've had that, and I know how awful it is, and that's one of it's going to be just a joy to show you how to overcome this. Shame attacking exercises were created by Dr. Albert Ellis. We've referred to him in one or two previous podcasts. He made a lot of contributions, and
he actually started curing himself by using shame attacking. That was his beginning, right?
Absolutely. He wasn't the most attractive looking guy. That could be a fair thing to say. And he had this fear of rejection by women. And so he described over a couple of weeks, he was determined to walk up to 200 attractive women and ask them for a date.
Yeah.
No matter how anxious it made him.
Right.
I actually did.
And he got rejected a lot.
He said he got rejected by 199 of them. Only one of them accepted a date with him, and then he said that she didn't show up. But so he didn't score any dates that way in New York City. But he did overcome his fear of being rejected, and it really showed in his later life. And then he became, I think, quite the womanizer. Not that I recommend that, but it was in the long term extremely successful. And I developed an affection for Dr. Ellis, even though I didn't know him, really, really well, and just had a few interactions with him. But they were of high quality, and so he asked me if I would give a talk in New York for his some workshop he was giving. A lot of his students were there, and I said I'd love to. So I gave a half-a-day presentation on what was then I was calling cognitive therapy, and And it went very well. And then several of his students took me out to dinner after the presentation, and they said there's this fantastic restaurant not far from here, and it's a buffet Chinese restaurant. You have to stand in line to get in, and it takes a while because it's so popular. So we went there, and we were standing in line. The line was weaving through the restaurant, through the tables where people were seated, and I said, I heard today about this technique you use for shy people called shame attacking exercises. And I understand the idea is shy people are afraid of making a fool of themselves in public, doing something foolish, so they're always avoiding people.
Or sometimes just talking to people.
Yeah, exactly. And so you have them make a fool of themselves on purpose in public, I understand. And I'd like to hear more about it. And they said, well, Dr. Ellis thinks this is, really a powerful technique, but before you're allowed to use it on students, on your patients, you have to do one yourself. And he said that to facilitate this, he has a contest every year and gives an award to the psychologist in the United States who does the most bizarre shame attacking exercise. Right. And so this one year, a psychologist from Portland won, and he went into a crowded drugstore and announced out loud, do you sell rubbers here? And then the druggist, kind of this quiet, discreet way, said, yes, we have condoms here. And then the psychologist asked in an even louder voice, could I buy 12 dozen condoms? Or rubbers. Can I buy 12 dozen rubbers? And the druggist, kind of discreetly, kind of trying to keep his voice low, said, yes, we have a pretty good supply here. We can supply you with 12 dozen. And then the psychologist said in a real loud voice, do you have the teeny weensy kind? So he got the award. And so they were describing this, and I said, well, I think I've got so many shy people. 60% of my patients have loneliness, shyness problems, and I think I'll start using this technique. And then they said, well, then you've got to do one first. And that's a kind of an ethical rule. You can never ask your patients to do something you yourself would be unwilling to do.
Yeah.
And they said, in fact, you could do one right now here in the restaurant. And then I started to get anxious because of my own fairly intense social anxiety. And I said, well, what would I have to do exactly? And they said, well, a good one for you, Dr. Burns, would be to walk up at a table where people are eating and ask if you can sample some of their food.
Yeah.
And I got really panicked. I said, oh, no, that would be inappropriate. And I'm a psychiatrist. I have a coat and tie on, and that wouldn't be the right thing to do. And I'm just freaking out, wishing I hadn't, raised this question.
Right.
And they said, see, you're just whining and complaining and resisting like patients do.
Yeah.
But you can do it right now, and we expect you to do it right now.
Uh-huh.
And there were like 4 or 5 of them, and they had been kind of admiring me because of my talk. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I don't want to let them down, but it was just awful. So I forced myself to walk up to this round table where there were 6 people seated, and they had all these Chinese food dishes in the middle. And I said, listen, I've heard that this is one of the best restaurants in New York City. Best Chinese restaurants. Is the food as good as they say? And they looked up at me and they said, yep. That was all. They didn't offer to give me any food. And I'm standing there awkwardly, and there's 6 people are staring at me. I look over in line, and these 5 or 6 people from the Ellis Institute are staring at me. Yeah, are you going to do it or not? So I turned to them, and this was very, very difficult. I just had to force myself to do this. And I said, well, this probably sounds pretty nutty, but do you suppose I could taste that dish right there? And they said, oh, sure, we've got more than we can eat here. So they gave me a spoonful of it, and I said, gee, that's really good. And they said, oh, well, taste this other one. It's even better. So they gave me another dish. And then the Ellis people rushed up and they said, oh, can we taste some too? So they started feeding everyone, samples of their food, and everyone was laughing and yucking it up. And then we went back in line, and I realized, my gosh, I just made a total ass of myself, and the world didn't come to an end. And they probably enjoyed it. They have something funny to talk about, these nutty people that came up and asked to taste their food. And I thought, maybe I've been taking myself a little bit too seriously, a whole lot too seriously. And then I began doing all kinds of shame attacking exercises and having my patients do shame attacking exercises as well. There's an art to it, and we can give more examples of shame attacking.
Give us some examples. This is getting quite juicy.
Yeah, I take my... it can be something as simple. I treated a woman in Philadelphia who was very shy, who was working in the area of high finance, and she was a single attractive woman, but she was incredibly shy, and she was noticing all these attractive single guys, but she was afraid to flirt with them or talk to them again because of her own crippling shyness. And the one I had her do was just I told her to go into the Wanamaker's department store near, right after work, and she went in there, and there was a sale on women's socks or something, so there were tons of women in there, trying to find these specially priced socks. And then I told her, just shout out the time at the top of your lungs. So, she shouted out, it's 5:22, Pacific or Eastern Standard Time. And then I said, and then when they turn to look at you, just repeat it. It's 5:22 Eastern Standard Time.
Right.
And, she did not want to do this, and she fought tooth and nail, and, I'd make a fool of myself, and the word will spread, and, I'll be shamed and all of this. But she finally agreed to do it. And the interesting thing, she said, when she shouted it out, no one even bothered to look at her. They were all just trying to get these socks over, and then she shouted it out again, and they ignored her. But she in fact, I got an email from her. That must have been 35 years ago, and I guess she looked me up or saw the website and sent me an email that it was a life-changing experience for her. And after that, she just started flirting with guys and started dating like crazy, and got married. I had a patient, a very shy patient, stand up in the subway in New York City. He would commute down from New York. And again, it was like pulling teeth to get him to agree to do this. But he got on the subway, and at every stop, he jumped up in the air and shouted out, "This is 34th Street, and this is 35th Street," or whatever. And he said he noticed this, and this was a guy who was 31. He'd never had a date. Actually, he was very good looking, very intelligent, but his father had started him in psychoanalysis when he was 4 years old, thinking he was somehow going to prevent, emotional problems from developing. And the poor kid spent his entire childhood, lying on the couch, free associating with psychoanalysts. And so he would come to sessions and just kind of complain. That's what he was used to doing.
Yeah.
And he would never do his homework. And I finally confronted him, and I said, this is something that you're going to have to do. In fact, I told him, and maybe I shouldn't admit this, but I said, listen, he said to me, Dr. Burns, have you noticed how passive-aggressive I am? Like, I won't ever do your homework assignments. And then you always act so nice, and you seem kind of phony to me. Don't you get pissed off at me, Dr. Burns? So then I took a chance, and I said, well, Ralph, if you want to know the truth, I am pissed off at you, and I think you should either piss or get off the pot. Because every week you come in here, and I tell you how to change your life, and you whine, oh, no, I can't do that, it's too hard. But you can do that. And that's what I'm asking you to do. And he actually liked that. He gave me a perfect empathy that day for the first time. Yeah. And then he went back to New York. He got on the subway, and at every stop he started jumping up in the air and shouting out the street. And then this really cute girl was giving him the eye. And so she said, why do you jump up in the air like that at every stop and shout out, the name of the street? And she said, oh, my shrink told me to do this because I'm really shy. and I've been afraid to, talk to attractive, women like yourself. Yeah. And she said, well, I think you're kind of cute. I think what you're doing is cool. Here's my phone number. So he ran home and called her and got his first date, and he had started then flirting with women like crazy. He even got laid that week. And it was a life changer. But it's very frightening, and you have to have the right patient. You don't want to do something that's going to hurt somebody. And
of course, that's also the concern. I know that when you do your workshops and intensives, you will sometimes take the participants on a walk, and you'll do some of those on those walks. What do you do then? Your hikes too.
For example, sometimes I take the Tuesday group at Stanford over to the Stanford Mall, and we give each other assignments to do shame attacking exercises. And so the one I had to do last time we went over there, the student said I had to go into Victoria's Secret and ask for a bra in my size. Yeah. And that was very, very difficult. And I asked the woman, she said, well, I don't think we have that, but why don't you go to Macy's men's department and try there? So I got right out of there, but I was relieved I survived. And we went into Macy's men's department, and we were broke up into little groups of 3. We had about 30 therapists there, but we took small groups so it wouldn't be too many all in one location. And so we walked into Macy's, and they had this rock music playing, and we're trying to think of some more shame attacking exercises. And then this psychiatrist in our group, I won't mention his name, he probably wouldn't care, but he's this real serious guy, and he works out all the time. He's real well-built and just studying, going to workshops all the time. And all of a sudden he came waltzing down the aisle swirling in a purple dress he had tried on. And then another one from our group, Jacob, who you know. Yeah, I know Jacob. He came waltzing up to the cash register. He had picked up a mannequin, a styrofoam mannequin that was only a waist-down mannequin with these fancy Levi's. Yeah. So he walked up to the fellow at the cash register and he says, I think I'm in love. And I got to take her home with me. You got to sell me the mannequin. But I only have $21, and you've got to throw in the Levi's as well. And the poor fellow at the cash register said, well, we don't sell mannequins, and those Levi's themselves cost $89. And he says, I don't care. I can't go on without her. You got to sell me the mannequin. You got to throw in the Levi's. So you can do all kinds of,
it's not very nice to the clerk, though. Huh? It's not very nice to the clerk.
Well, I think he probably got a kick out of it, to be honest. You don't ever want to do something that would hurt or frighten another person. You want to kind of make a fool of yourself. And you also have to select the right patient, because maybe a patient might not have good social skills, or might not be attractive and might actually get scare people or get hostile reactions. So it's a powerful technique. I could give you dozens of examples of lives that have been changed by this technique, and all kinds of crazy creative things patients have done. But maybe I'll see what questions you have, and if you want more examples, I've got fantastic additional examples.
Well, these are some good examples. I know that you do this when you go on your hikes.
Yeah.
How do you do this when you're walking on a trail like you do?
Well, for example, we had a young man from Canada that one of my students was treating, who had the fear of peeing in his pants. It was kind of like an OCD kind of thing, and so he was going in Berkeley. He was a graduate student in Berkeley in electrical engineering, let's say, but he would be constantly running out of the class just in case he had to go to the bathroom, go check if he had to go to the bathroom, and he kept having this fear, what if I pee in my pants? That would be so awful. And so I suggested that a good technique he could do would just throw some water on himself, so it would look like he peed his pants and walk around the block. But my student who was treating him thought, oh, that's too extreme. He couldn't stand to do that. I call that reverse hypnosis, where the patient hypnotizes the therapist and they're not using exposure.
Right.
And so on a hike, I decided to check out, I said, well, maybe it is too extreme. And so we were with a group going down a hill, and then a group of hikers approached us, 5 or 6 of them. And so I grabbed some water and splashed it all over my pants. Yeah. And then as they were approaching, I shouted out, oh, look at me, I just peed in my pants. And they started laughing, and they shouted, we're going to pee in our pants too. And again, it was, you confront the monster you fear the most, and it turns out
it has no teeth.
The monster has no teeth. But it's so amazing how anxiety is like a form of self-hypnosis. We hypnotize ourselves, and often the therapist as well, into believing that the thing that we're afraid of is so incredibly dangerous. And therapists succumb to that hypnotic trance, and 80% of them don't use exposure. And then the treatment is doomed. Exposure is not a treatment for anxiety. It's just a method you can use in the treatment of a patient that's anxious. You need these other models as well, the motivational hidden emotion model and the cognitive model as well. But it's got to be part of the treatment package.
Yeah. Well, thank you. That's quite a few good ideas, and I may even tap you in private, but I think this will at least give a kick to our listeners, if not some ideas for their own practice and exposure.
Yeah, it was life-changing for me.
Great. Well, thanks, David. This has been another episode of the Feeling Good podcast. For more information, visit Dr. Burns' website at feelinggood.com, where you will find the show notes for this podcast under the blog page, and where you can leave your comments and questions. The website has an abundance of resources for therapists as well as non-therapists, including books, workshops, a list of online training groups around the world, and much more. Theme music is Gypsy Jazz in Paris, 1935, composed and performed by Brett Van Donsel. I am your host, Fabrice Nye, and I invite you to join us next time for another episode of the Feeling Good podcast.